104.5, the team, your home for Yankee baseball. And, of course, Techie's Fire and Water Restoration, your best way back to normal. Visit them online at tefirewater.com. The sponsors for Buster Olney, who joins us right now. And, Buster, I was bought into your theory that Kelvin Herrera was going to be a Yankee, and the Nationals jump on us and they take him away.
Well, and that was a case where, the Nationals saw that he was going to be the most coveted reliever in the marketplace, and they were aggressive, and they make the move on him. I know that the general feeling around the sport was that the Royals didn't get enough, and there was some surprise about that. Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. The Royals feel like that they got players they wanted. But either way, the top reliever off the board, and it does continue to seem like, as we've talked about in recent weeks, like the Yankees still hope to get a starting pitcher who will augment the rotation.
Well, all right, so who's the guy? Because, I know we've got I say we like I'm a Yankee. I know the Yankees have pieces. Like, who's the guy that you think is most likely they land?
Oh, wait, you're not a Yankee? So you're that much of a Yankee guy and you're not a Yankee?
Well, I say we all the time, but you like to bust on me, so I figured I'd jump ahead of it, and then I just gave you another way to bust on me.
Look, and I think I said this to you before, I'm sure that at some point they probably have made a call to the Giants and said, if you ever want to talk about Bumgarner, we're here. And they probably at some point are going to let it be known to the Mets. If you actually are willing to talk about DeGrom, we're here. But and I know that those two scenarios are very unlikely to happen. And I think the best of the B group is Jay Happ of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's a veteran lefty, free agent at the end of the year. He'll be relatively expensive because he's probably the best and most experienced starter who's out there, who might be the best fit for the Yankees. Blue Jays front office is really good at assessing value. But I know this, Frank Cashman has a very good working relationship with Mark Shapiro, who heads up the Blue Jays front office, Ross Atkins, their general manager. And, Jay Happ, left-hand, the long history of left-handers pitching in Yankee Stadium is well established. And I do think that once the Yankees sort of dig in, and the fact that their farm system is so loaded, it'll really give the Blue Jays a wide range of opportunities to sort through in their farm system, which is why, if I had to guess one way or the other, I think that's the guy they wound up getting, Jay Happ.
Buster Olney with us right now, 104.5 The Team. Buster, Gleyber Torres is officially untouchable, correct?
Well, Brian Cashman said as much last week, where he, the quote from him was when somebody asked, "Would you, is Gleyber Torres available?" And Brian says, "I have to walk around New York City. You understand that, right?" Like he knows that the fans wouldn't want him. And look, we actually had an argument about this last week on the podcast. My colleague Boog Shambi, who's so knowledgeable, he said flat out he would consider trading Gleyber Torres to the Mets for DeGrom, and I'm like, no way. 6 years of control with a young infielder who's showing to be an elite defender, also someone who's showing a lot of power. And it does feel like that he's still a player we're learning about. Like, he surprised them with his defense. He surprised them with his power. He has such a presence at the plate. I wouldn't want to move him now when you're not quite sure exactly how great he can be.
Buster, now let's talk about the pieces that I think almost need to move, like Clint Frazier and Brandon Drury. These guys, they're big leaguers. If the Yankees don't do something with them soon, it could cause problems, right?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily going to cause problems with Clint Frazier. He certainly is a very marketable piece, and during the winter when the Yankees were talking about Garrett Cole with the Pirates, they made it clear they were willing to trade him. Brandon Drury, on the other hand, when the Yankees acquired him, they were very excited. And they talked about how for years they had tried to make a move for him, and then Andujar, with Drury being down with some of the concussion issues he had, all of a sudden Miguel Andujar demonstrated that he's the guy. And so I do think that probably in terms of trying to keep maximizing the value of Drury, I think this summer you probably do need to move him unless they look at him as being a guy who in the future could be like a utility guy. But I have not dug into that conversation specifically with the Yankees. That to me would be more likely an option B, option A being potentially put Drury in a trade for someone like A.J. Happ.
All right, Buster, let me dust off your crystal ball. Will we ever see Jacoby Ellsbury in a Yankees uniform again?
My guess is yes, but there's no doubt. You definitely get the feeling around the edges like the Yankees are kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. when they're going through the updates, and I'm sure it's a very respectful conversation, but he hasn't been a factor in a long time. They don't have a role for him. It's kind of like, you know how the Red Sox have had these minor leaguers sort of in payroll purgatory, where it's more worthwhile for the Red Sox to keep Rusney Castillo in the minor leagues so they're not assessed a luxury tax penalty. In some respects, it's easier for the Yankees to have Jacoby Ellsbury in the DL and not being productive, because then they don't have to worry about trying to mix him into the playing time.
Buster Olney with us. Thanks to our friends at Tech East Fire and Water Restoration. Buster, is Brandon Nimmo the bright spot that Mets fans can hang their hats on this year?
Levack, no doubt about it. He and DeGrom, and you know the neat thing is that when you talk to, like I asked Mickey Callaway the question at the beginning of spring training, beginning of your tenure as the Mets manager, what did you guys think of Nimmo? And he was flat out honest. He said, "Look, I had him as a fourth outfielder. I had him as a fifth outfielder. He's been better than that." And you do wonder if, given his history of not having played a lot of baseball as an amateur, if this is a tremendous young athlete who is getting better as he plays more baseball. And and everyone, of course, talks about his personality and how effusive he is. I mean, that's all real. Mickey Callaway tells a great story about when he was calling each of the Mets players for the first time. He said pretty much all the calls lasted somewhere between 30 seconds and 90 seconds. "Hi, I'm Mickey Callaway, your new manager. Nice to meet you. Okay, Skip, talk to you down the road." On the other hand, Brandon Nimmo, that conversation lasted 25 minutes. Like, Nimmo was just wearing him out on the phone, he said, in good-natured fashion. He said, it's probably because he's from Wyoming, and he had nobody else to talk to anyway.
Buster with us right now. Buster, guy formerly known as future Yankee Bryce Harper.
Man.
I was calling him future Cub Bryce Harper for a little while, but what is the future for Bryce Harper?
It's hard to say. If I had to bet on a team today, I think he's going to stay with the Nationals, because he's really having the absolute worst case scenario play out in this hugely important free agent year. His average, as you and I talk, is down to 209. His hitting mechanics have completely fallen off. Basically, we saw it with the Yankees when they played the Nationals recently, and Sonny Gray was pitching to him. It was like, you know what? You're falling off into the first base dugout in every swing. You're so anxious at the plate. We're just going to pitch to the outside corner, and you won't be able to do anything with it because your balance is so far off. And these are numbers that, if I were an owner, a general manager, the numbers that he's generating with walks and strikeouts would scare me to death. In the first month of this season, he had 38 walks and 28 strikeouts, okay? So in April, 38 walks, 21 strikeouts. In May, 10 walks, 28 strikeouts. In June, 5 walks and 23 strikeouts. Those numbers all seem to indicate a player who is putting a ton of pressure on himself, and it is swinging at a lot of pitches. Recently on an off day, Bryce spent 2.5 hours taking extra batting practice at the Nationals Park. If I were friends with Bryce, I'd say, Bryce, a couple things. One, you're a great athlete. You really know how to hit. B, stop trying so hard. Please relax. And C, swing at strikes. And if he does those three things, he could be great. But this year it's been a real problem for him.
Well, he's costing himself a ton of money. Meanwhile, Manny Machado looks like he's going to cash in spades.
Yeah, and if I were to guess on a team now, it would definitely be the Philadelphia Phillies.
Sorry, guys.
They have so much payroll flexibility. 3 years ago, when we looked at the Phillies, we thought, okay, they've got Michael Franco coming up as their third baseman. They've got J.P. Crawford, high draft pick, coming up as their shortstop. Both of those guys are kind of beginning to evaporate as high-end guys. Franco, 280 on base percentage at age 25. Crawford recently hurt. His batting average under 200. They could use a third baseman, it looks like. And think about these numbers. Their total payroll obligations for 2019, just $67 million. 2020, total payroll obligations, $48 million. So whatever Manny Machado wants, they can give him more because they just have so much money. And the team president, Andy McPhail, he was with the Orioles when they drafted Machado. Their general manager, Matt Klentak, he was with the Orioles when they drafted Machado.
Wow.
4 or 5 people in that front office, they all know Machado because they worked with him in Baltimore. So there are a lot of reasons to think that's where he's going to wind up.
All right, so Goz has a crush on Manny Machado. I will admit I have a crush on almost everyone in pinstripes right now. You have to admit that you have a crush on Mike Trout. You have to.
I'm not going to admit that, okay? I'm not going to admit it because I'm a journalist who's just going to look at the facts, okay? And here are the facts. He is, without a doubt, going to finish his career as one of the Inner Circle Hall of Famers. If you look at the numbers that he's putting up, and as you and I talk, he's preparing to play game number 1,000 in his career, okay? He's 26 years old. And he already, and you know the statistic, wins above replacement, which basically accumulates all the different elements of an offense, whether it's your walks, it's your home runs, it's your stolen base, piles it all together into one number to demonstrate value. As you and I sit here today, he already is ahead in career WAR at age 26 of Yogi Berra and Mike Piazza and Willie McCovey and Dave Winfield and a whole bunch of all the Hall of Famers. That's career wins above replacement, okay? That's something that he's going to continue to build going forward. It's remarkable what he's doing, and I love this story that Torrey Hunter told me about the way that he plays. It reminds you, actually, of how Jeter would always run hard to first base. Torrey Hunter referred to him as the digger because when he runs to first base, he always runs hard, but he also, because he weighs 240 pounds, he leaves these huge divots along the first baseline, and according to Torrey, the deepest divots in baseball. And yet, I always love to hear the stories of first basemen talking about the sound of Trout running up the first baseline. They say it's like a freight train coming.
You're glowing, Buster. You're glowing. All right, Buster, you wrote an interesting article this week about the home run derby, Davids versus Goliaths, the little guys versus the big guys. Flesh that out for me. Let me hear that idea.
All right, so we've seen, let's first off, you start with this. Aaron Judge is not going to be in it. Shohei Ohtani's not going to be in it. You're kind of looking for a hook for the home run derby, which is, typically now become baseball's highest-rated event during the summertime. And so my idea is in this year in which we're seeing so many little guys among the home run leaders. Chris Davis of the Oakland Athletics, he's 5'10". Jose Ramirez of the Indians, he's 5'9". Jose Altuve of the Astros, 5'5.5" on a good day. On down the line, Mookie Betts at 5'9". Take four of those guys, the shorter guys, and Javier Baez at 6 feet tall told me he would like to do the Derby. And line them up on one side of the bracket. On the other side of the bracket, you line up your Bryce Harpers and your Giancarlo Stantons or whoever's going to be in it, and then that sets up a David or Goliath for the final. And I got to tell you, I was pretty excited yesterday when Scott Service, the manager of the Mariners, went on radio and talked about how he thinks Ichiro should be in the Derby. Ichiro was taking BP, hitting balls into the right field stands in Yankee Stadium yesterday. You've always heard all these stories about how in BP he can hit just home run after home run after home run because his eye-hand coordination is that good. Now, after last night's game, Ichiro said he wouldn't do it because he wouldn't want to disrespect the game. I suspect people in MLB would be begging him, please, disrespect him, please, because Ichiro in the home run derby on one side of a Davids versus Goliaths bracket would be a lot of fun.
It's funny, too, since you said that, Gleyber Torres has had to come out and say, look, I'm not interested in the home run derby. So I think your story is influencing the other stories.
I don't know, but I found it interesting that he was asked the question and answered it, yeah.
See, I'll give you the credit that you're not willing to take for yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Buster, where are you going this weekend?
We are in Washington. We're going to have the Phillies and the Nationals, and I've been doing a lot of digging on Machado and Harper this week. Yeah,
you may want to hide from Harper after what you just said.
Man, I just, just the facts, ma'am.
Buster, man, safe travels, and thank you as always.